Hey everyone, Dr. Brandon Crawford here. This is the second time I've had Dr. Jack Kruse on the longevity formula, and here's what I've learned. I have absolutely no idea where our conversations are going to go. So this time, I just hit record immediately when he popped on. What started as a discussion about his 2.5-month world cruise turned into something I never saw coming. We're talking about Australia's health crisis, why Bitcoin might be the most important prescription I could give you, and how nonverbal autistic children are communicating in ways that'll blow your mind. Fair warning, Uncle Jack does not hold back. He's going to challenge everything you think you know about health, money, and protecting your family. Some of you will love this. Some of you will hate it, but I guarantee you, you will not forget it. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Longevity Formula with Dr. Brandon Crawford. Let's explore the new era of wellness.
Probably the biggest take home is Australia is really sick. Really, really sick. And most of them don't know how sick they really are.
Where all did you go?
Well, I went all over the world. I was a world cruise for 2.5 months. And I went to North America, South America, all the Pacific Islands, Australia, up to Asia, Asia back to North America back down to South America, Central America, then back to Miami, and then back here.
Man, that's awesome.
And it was a lot of cultures we visited, a lot of places that had different experiences, through COVID. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize kind of what was going to happen, but I had a lot of people sit down with me because a lot of the people didn't know who I was. There was one person on the cruise who did know who I was, but she had the biggest tan of anybody on the boat. She was actually Australian. But she said to me, she goes, do you see my countrymen, how sick they are? She's the one who actually said it to me. And then we actually had some very interesting things happen. Like people sat down with us and we went out to dinner with them and, hearing about the turbo cancers. Mm-hmm. This person had, a turbo cancer, and then hearing what the treatment plan, came up with in Australia. It was just shocking. And some of the basic stuff that you think that, a centralized doctor would tell a patient with this type of problem. No, nothing. And, when we're on the boat, she was able to go to, the library and get on the internet and look this stuff up. And she goes, I can't believe this shit's actually in the literature. And they're not telling me that. And I said, the reason why is they're hoping you die.
Wow.
I mean, to kill you off, it's kind of like you're getting rid of the Library of Alexandria of all the things that Ralph Baric and Fauci and the Department of Defense did, and this message was, how shall we say, inconvenient. And then it got even more interesting because when I started chatting like at the bars on the boat, and people started to overhear the conversations we were having, especially when we started talking about the crown, boy, the people in Australia, the people in the UK, because there was a lot of Brits on this boat, they're beginning to wake up to what's going on. And, while we were out there, this is when the deal that Trump started to negotiate with Australia about the rare earth elements.
Right.
People from Australia and Britain thought that this was, tied to the Chinese problem because, Australia and Britain have a China problem too. But I explained to them, I said, this is not, you guys are missing the point. The point is Trump is going directly after, the royal family and the crown and all the imperialism and colonialism, because that's where this comes from. They've used politics and banking to try to keep, the colonization, imperialism going after the Revolutionary War. And by keeping the politics of Australia down, like a lot of people don't know that in 1975, there was a prime minister from Australia that was going to nationalize mining in Australia, and he was literally taken out by the royal family overnight. Why? Because very few people know this. In their foundational documents, the royal family can come and appoint somebody else and completely remove the whole government in Australia as part of the Commonwealth. And they did that in 75. And I was talking about that on the cruise. And the Brits knew it, and they didn't understand how it linked to today, because this is now 50 years later. And I said, well, just remember, if the British Empire can control the resources, and what has Australia done this whole time? They've dug and sold to where Britain wants them to sell.
Right.
Well, now you have an American president coming direct into a Commonwealth country saying, we're going to do our deal with you, and it's going to be mutual for both, meaning we don't want you to just dig it out of the ground. We want to help you build something, not only in Australia, and we're willing to build the chips in Australia if you give us another supply line. But what the effect is this was Trump and Trump's organization telling them they're going after the British Empire. And what also happened on this trip, which really blew people's minds, this is when Trump went in and basically told Carney and told the people in Australia, I don't know if I should say some of the Australian deputies that are tied to this British story, he actually showed up to America and told Trump that he didn't really like him. And Trump said, you know what? I don't really care what you think. I'm going to go straight to the point. And I tried to explain to people that you understand now why Trump met with Carney in Canada before all this. And I said, do you understand now why all the CFR and globalists are running to the city of London to meet with the King and the current Labour Prime Minister Starmer, who's a Fabian? I said, what's happening right now, I don't think you realize who the deep state really is. The deep state is the Fabians that are in the UK. And I said, when they cut this cord, not only you're unleashing the United States, but you're also unleashing the Commonwealth countries. And what we found on this trip is that Canada has decided to stay with the crown. But guess what? The Prime Minister of Australia, through COVID, they've gotten such a big punch in the mouth that they realized that they were lied to. And now they're much more open to some of the things that are coming out of Trump's mouth. Now, most people know who follow me. I'm not really a big fan of Trump, but is he trying to do certain things to help America? Yes, this is one of them. I want him to do a little bit more on the biology side, but I don't think that's going to happen because of Bondi and Susie Wiles, because let's face it, both of them have huge ties to Big Pharma. Both of them are part of the Amber program that's being placed around, Bobby Kennedy. So I don't have any illusions about that. But you remember, when you're on this ship that's sinking, which is the United States, especially from healthcare, any wins that you can get are wins that you take. And he's moving and doing things, because I ultimately think the only fix for American medicine, centralized American medicine, is Bitcoin. I don't think there's any chance to fix on the science side. The science is completely polluted. Peer review is owned also by the royals, through the Maxwell's family. That's who controls peer review. And you have to realize we've got people that Kevin McKiernan are fighting right now who are trying to get, papers retracted. I don't know if you saw what just happened recently, because I know you're a clinician and you're probably not paying attention to all this, but Kevin's paper that definitively shows the contamination in the jabs is now on the Bitcoin blockchain. He actually just put it on there last week. So now it's there for all of humanity.
Okay,
Even
so
though
what is that now? So
it's a paper that he and Jessica Rose wrote about the contamination in all the jabs and how serious the problem is. The Maxwell clan from the UK, which controls peer review, kept this out from being published. Why? Because they keep talking shit about it and they're threatening journals to put it out there. So what did Kevin do while he's still fighting, the battle to get it published? Because it's in preprint. He put it on the Bitcoin blockchain. So now everybody in humanity can literally go back and find this paper no matter what they do.
Wow.
And I think this is a baller move because Kevin believes kind of what I believe, that when you fix the money, you fix the world. And I know people like you, Brandon, you as a clinician who are taking care of kids with autism, you don't really understand that link yet of how fixing the money fixes the world, fixes the problems that you see walking into your clinic every day. I can tell you 20 years ago, I didn't understand it either. But now it's crystal clear. This is the only way to fix it, because you have to have money that the government and these bankers and the globalists, the World Economic Forum, the Council of Foreign Relations, they can no longer control us with.
Right.
And until we get down that path, and it seems pretty clear to me that while Trump may be not able to move the needle in certain ways, this is one way he's able to move the needle, because I don't think the globalists are smart enough to realize really what's going on. Because if you take control back of the money away from the bankers, which is what Americans and, people all over the world have been doing every time I buy Bitcoin, you're eventually going to, topple, the kingdom that they've built up for 500 years. So I would tell you, from this viewpoint and this cruise that I took, Bitcoin was the Trojan horse that the people in Davos should have never let through the gate. And now that it's where it's at, they can't do anything about it. It's now going to take effect. And what they have to do is they have to convince people like you and Vanessa that you want to stay in fiat and you never want to go the other way around. And once you realize truly that the fix for most of our problems, political, economic, sovereignty, everything, really ties to the money failing. Same thing is true at war. I mean, you just saw what happened in Gaza with Israel. It's really hard to fight wars when you have money that you can't debase. And, you turn CNBC on now, and you did it every time that I was on the cruise, and you keep hearing the pundits there now talking about the debasement trade, which is basically buying gold and Bitcoin and not buying stocks. And you hear Trump screaming, at Powell about dropping rates and why they're not dropping rates, but they're dropping them everywhere else that's compliant with the people in the city of London. You begin to start to see truly what's really going on behind the wizard's curtain. Right. And let's just say all those different things that I just described to you happened on this world adventure. And it happened with a lot of different people that didn't have their eyes open and didn't see these connections. But literally the current events were going on while this was going on, while I was in those places. And I had the opportunity to sit down with people and tell them what was really going on and show them, like Twitter in the United States. So people in Australia was stunned to find out that they couldn't read the things on there. They couldn't follow me. And I said, do you realize your government's doing that? Like, none of them knew about the new digital ID laws that were on the boat because it was being blocked from social media on that side. But my Twitter was right there for them to look at. And they're scrolling through my phone and they're going, holy shit, it's really happening. And they're not even telling us what's going to happen. So from that standpoint, it was quite interesting. And then, the good side is going to places like Peru and seeing people who are actively, running towards Bitcoin and changing their country. When we were there, we saw Bolivia, which is one of their neighbors, go from a left-wing communist country to pretty much free market capitalism. It happened on the trip. And what's that effect? It's the effect that you're seeing from Malay. Same part of the trip when we were there. We started to hear that there's noise out of Chile that they're going to do the same thing because they like what's happening in South America. And South America isn't going to do the digital ID. So guess what? These are all big information things for people to understand in North America, because guys like you are in the middle of the United States, you have no idea what's going on in these other countries because you're not there.
Right.
You have no idea how things are changing. Like when I was in Venezuela, because I was there too, I saw all the ships that are off the coast. I saw a lot of this stuff that's going on down there. Got to talk to people from Venezuela. Okay? The border's open between those three islands, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. I was on those islands for a period of time. got to talk to those people about what's going on inside. Also got to see my Twitter feed there, to see this stuff going on. So it's really nice when you have the opportunity to actually share this kind of message with people who governments are blocking them from the truth. And when people understand how big the censorship is, let's be very clear in the United States. I don't care if you're left or right. There's one thing I can tell you about left or right. They're coming for your privacy. Both sides are coming for your privacy. And Bitcoin is the only tool that I know that restores your privacy. So when you understand that, you listen to this podcast, you probably tuned in and thought, hey, we're going to talk about some cool medicine here. You probably didn't realize that Bitcoin is probably the number one prescription that you need to fix most of the problems that we have in centralized medicine. I've realized that for a long time, but I can tell you this 2.5 month trip around the world actually has made me double, triple, and quadruple down because of the experience I just told you. The experiences that me and Chantel had on this trip were nothing short of putting Windex on our glass eyes.
Wow. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, the things you're saying, right? So just a little bit of my history, right? So I retired. We talked a little bit about my Costa Rica stint, right? So there was a time when I retired. I was actually a day trader at that point in time. So I was pretty decent. I was able to make a living with the amount of money I had, did everything well. But then because of market manipulation, I lost a ton of money. And I did everything right?
Well, just to be clear to the audience, so market manipulation is economic censorship. Just so everybody's clear about that.
Absolutely. It was an NVIDIA trade.
Also time theft, if you really think about it.
True. And like I said, I had done everything right. But because of market manipulation, it had to do with NVIDIA, I lost a crap ton of money. And I decided, I was like, there's no way I can do this. I did everything right and I still lost massively. So I do hold Bitcoin, right? I don't actively trade it, but I do hold it. Now I don't live my life with it, right? And that's one thing maybe you could help us understand. What does it mean to you?
I do. But remember, I live in a country where Bitcoin and American dollars are legal tender. Yeah. And if you really want to learn and understand truly how powerful Bitcoin is, you just need to come down and see the circular economy that President Bukele allows his people to operate in. And when you see it for yourself, you look to your left and look to your right and go, what am I doing? And that's the part of the equation here that was really beneficial to me, because I went to parts of the world that I never would have went to. Like if I sat down and told you what happened in Moorea and Tahiti and Easter Island to talk to the Pacific Islanders, their eyes were absolutely shell-shocked. You know, I actually showed a guy in Tahiti actually how to sell his pearls directly to Bitcoiners. He had no idea that he could do a transaction this way to avoid the French tax authorities. And I showed him how to do it, and we did it. That's how cool this trip was. Like when I tell you, cool. Yeah, when I tell you that power's in, you know, the story you just told people about Costa Rica and day trading in artificial intelligence stock, NVIDIA, you know, and it ties to, you know, the semiconductors that we just talked about in Australia. You begin to realize that everything is connected. Why? Because this is a guy whose family owns their own oyster farms, and they have the best Tahitian pearls out there. And he's like, look, I'd really like to do this deal with you. He goes, but I'll get crushed in French taxes, you know, because remember, the French still own them, and they're still a colony. And I said, okay. I said, are you open? Do you have an open mind? Can I show you a different way of doing things? I said, do you have a couple cell phones? He goes, yeah. I said, okay. I want you to download this wallet, download that wallet. And then we did the whole deal after I told him this is how the transaction would happen. I said, now to show you, because we were talking about a large sum of money, I said, I'm going to do it with $1 to prove to you that it can happen less than 1 nanosecond. So we did it. We set it up. And he looked at me and he goes, why am I not doing my whole business like this? I said, just so you know, you no longer have to pay taxes to the French government.
Wow.
I said, there's no way for them to do this. And he looked at me and he's like, dude, this is unbelievable. So, Brandon, what I'm telling you is When you're in Costa Rica, you didn't have Uncle Jack fall in your lap to explain to you how you can still win. So what did I do on this trip? I went and showed a bunch of people who are ignorant about what you and I are talking about right now. And they were so curious that they jumped all in. And when I tell you that Chantal and I changed bartenders on cruise ships, we changed servers in restaurants, we changed Tahitian pearl farmers, security people at ports. Like when I tell you the mirror, janitors at restaurants, like the stories I could tell you, CEO executives with turbo cancer who were told the wrong things. I mean, the stories that I amassed over these 2 months, these are the stories that I think would resonate with people like on social media, probably doing webinars. Why? Because I don't think you know, when I say you, I'm talking to the audience, you truly know what it's like and what other people are facing in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. And when you see just how much they're being shielded by the governments and by the technocracy and how we can uncover that. Just like I said, pull the curtain back from the wizard. Then guess what? We have an opportunity to get a lot of savages all over the world to begin to understand that we need the money that you have in the bank is not your money. It's the bank's money.
Right.
And I tested somebody who didn't believe this on the boat. And I'll tell you exactly who it was. It's a British national. And he called his daughter up and told his daughter, because she had power of attorney on his account. I said, tell her to go take 5,000 pounds out of the bank right now, because Starmer had just signed a new law. So she went the next morning and she was cock-blocked and taking the money out. He goes, I left 2 months ago from England and was able to do that. She, in fact, took the money out. Now she can't do it.
Wow.
So guess what? Did he learn something while he was away? Yeah. And the thing is, I told him, I said, I need you to go back and tell most of your people. When this story was going on, there was a family from Scotland that was there listening to all this, and they were talking about their pensions. They had no idea. This is a shocking thing. They had no idea that 2 years ago, the Bank of England almost went belly up and lost their pensions. So I had to go back on my Twitter feed and show them that I was in fact right. He says, we're not allowed to search that. They were on their phone, Scottish phones, but connecting through foreign internet. They were not able to find the same thing, but yet I was showing them that this in fact was true. They had no earthly idea they came this close to losing their pensions.
Man.
And I said, do you realize that you just voted for the guy who did that to you? And he goes, well, how would I know? I said, do you understand how the game is played now? All they have to do is shield you from the right information. I said, that's censorship. If you want to understand how they perform time and value theft, it's through removing your privacy. It's through taking away the truth. And what is AI? The company that you were so big into, AI is the biggest scam you could ever imagine. Why? Because it's going to allow them to erase the truth, and you're going to believe what they tell you. And NVIDIA is the one that makes it happen.
I truly believe you there. I truly believe you. And it makes me sick watching all these providers start to adopt AI to think for them. Now, I mean, I get it. Technology can think faster and can, do things that maybe I didn't think through as a provider. But I mean, that's going to create a bunch of ignorant doctors, even more ignorant.
Oh, we already have a bunch. We have a bunch of ignorant doctors already that don't even know how ignorant they really are.
That's true.
They all are affected by the Dunning-Kruger effect. But, there's a lot of people out there that also have ignorance. I mean, it happened today on my Twitter feed with a couple of Bitcoiners. It happened with a doctor who's, a carnivore doctor. They wear their technology like it's jewelry and think there's no risk to it. And then, because they have beautiful bodies, they take a picture, and then all of a sudden they go through this tragedy where they can't have children, and they don't understand how you can look like Adonis and, lose your fertility and fecundity. And you try to explain to them that diet can't fix this, but the reason why it's happening is through the light. And then you have to get into a fight with a smooth brain orthopedic surgeon, who thinks he knows what he's talking about when he really doesn't. And, the problem is I don't get involved having those kind of discussions. Like, I don't do podcasts with people who I know don't know the science because it's fruitless. You know, it makes for a waste of time. It makes much more sense to talk to people who have an open mind. That's why I said the trip for me was really eye-opening, because I realized that the potential audience for me is even bigger than what I thought, because there's a lot of curious people out there. But you know what? They're not getting the information through because of how they sample, you know, those informations. And I think people are beginning to realize that they're going to have to start using VPNs. They're going to have to start accessing things from outside their country because they don't realize how bad it's being filtered. And, you know, the last two people I talked to, this was really eye-opening, was a couple that was on their honeymoon in Aruba from Brazil. Boy, what they had to tell us about what was going on in Brazil. And then at the end of it, they said, look, most of the young people in Brazil voted for these leftist communists. I said, it's only been leftist and communists now for about a year and a half, and everybody wants them gone. And I pointed out to them, I said, did you see what just happened in Bolivia? They didn't even know what happened in Bolivia because guess what? People in Brazil were blocking that regime change. They also didn't know what was going on in Venezuela, which I thought was, you know, these are their countries. It's not even, you know, close to my country. But when I showed them, you know, my Twitter feed and showed them the things that were discoverable, it stunned them. And I explained to them, I said, look, Elon Musk is doing you a favor. He's not a guy that I'm a big fan of either. But I've got to give him credit where credit's due. He's still allowing us to get trickles of information through that are true. I think Peter Thiel eventually will take that away from us and turn, you know, Elon into a useful idiot, just like they did with Lee Harvey Oswald somewhere down the road. But for right now, the people that are awake, I want you to realize, like, Brandon, you and Vanessa may not be able to go travel to Europe literally in a couple of months unless you sign up for the digital ID. Oh, wow. Why would you ever go to Europe if you've got to give your sovereignty away just to visit a country? But guess what? That's the laws that just changed in the UK, Canada, and Australia. That effectively is happening. If you try to go to those countries now, you will get, especially if you do it by boat, they will send you a piece of paper that says, you will have to forfeit this information in order to go to these countries. So, you know, I pointed out to Bitcoiners, I said, do you think you're going to be able to go to some of these Bitcoin meetings, you know, in certain parts of the world? The answer is no. I said, you may still be able to go to Prague. Why? Because they used to be communist. They're not going to sign up for this. But guess what? Just as I told the world in other podcasts, not yours, last year to be a speaker at Prague, in Bitcoin Prague, I had to fly from Panama to Turkey to get to that part of Europe without being accosted by the people in customs that are tied to the UK, tied to old Europe. So you got to realize that's already happening. If you would have seen on this cruise what changed, we went to 3 places. I'm not going to tell you who they were. I was asked to fill out documents in order to get off the boat. And this was after being on the boat because the laws had changed.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Okay. And I said, there's no way that I'm going to do this. In fact, one of the places wanted our passport. And I said, that ain't going to happen. And then that's when the boat said, well, if you don't surrender your passport, you can't get off the boat. I said, no problem.
So what's the solution here, and how do we, I mean, clearly we're
listening to me. Bitcoin.
So, okay. So let's walk through that.
Of gold and silver you have, it's time for you to go all in, my friend. Understand that when you do that, every time you buy a Satoshi, you're voting against Starmer. You're voting against Carney. You're voting against Kamala. You're voting against Bondi. You're voting against Susie Wiles. You're voting against all the rhinos in Congress. You're voting against Maxine Black. You're voting against Chuck Schumer. You're voting against Pelosi. You're voting against all the people that are insider trading and stealing our wealth right now.
Well, I definitely like the fact of voting against them, everyone that you said. So yes.
Right. Well, But you have to realize that they want the system to stay intact because they have benefited from it. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. Since I know you're a day trader, you may not have put this current events together, but I think you'll love the irony. Do you know that 2 days ago on CNBC, investment bank just downgraded Berkshire Hathaway? The same day, the same place, upgraded MicroStrategy. Think about what that means. Yeah. They just downgraded fiat money and they upgraded Bitcoin, and they put it on CNBC and Bloomberg. But guess what? Most of the people in your audience and maybe Vanessa's family, they don't know. They don't know what that just meant. That is a screaming validation of everything that Jack Kruse has just told you in the beginning of this podcast.
Right.
You know what? People only see what they can filter through what they know. And if you don't understand the basics, like they're telling you the end is coming. And the problem is if you don't get it, like you can't take your gold, Brandon, and go buy a Big Mac in the UK with it.
No.
It's impossible. But guess what you can do? You can do it when everybody's got a cell phone and you're doing it with Bitcoin. Because I got news to you. When I was in Venezuela, we were able to make transactions with people using Bitcoin because they told us we need Bitcoin because our money doesn't work here.
Wow.
Okay. Same thing was true in Costa Rica. I was in Costa Rica too. And that's not that far from here.
So in America, right? So if I put all my money in Bitcoin, I know a lot of places now we can, use the app and whatnot to purchase things, but do you still need to keep just a normal bank account open to transfer as needed? Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it that way. But what I would tell you specifically, since you're a little bit more facile with this than probably your audience, look at some of the videos out the Jack Mallers. He's the CEO of Strike. He was the guy that actually helped Bukele write the legal tender law for Bitcoin in El Salvador. He lives in Chicago. He announced earlier this year he's completely off the fiat standard. He lives on Bitcoin alone. He's figured out actually how to live off Bitcoin in the United States fully with no problem. Is it hard to do? Yes. But is it doable? Yes. So the point I try to make to you, instead of you doing it the way Jack's doing it, just keep the amount of money in fiat that you need to pay your monthly bills, but everything else should be YOLO'd into the best asset that's out there, which is not a Picasso. It's not gold. It's not silver. It's Bitcoin. And if you do that in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, remember, Brandon, you now have people that you used to actively follow, JP Morgan, Chase, all the Rockefeller and Rothschild banks now telling you that we want in. Who are the biggest scammers out there? Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, and Fink for BlackRock. What are they telling you? Buy Bitcoin. Why? Because they know it's the solution. The problem is they've also told you they want to steal your Bitcoin. That's what the Treasury Secretary in the United States said. And Lutnick and Fink are actively setting things up so that you'll put your Bitcoin in a bank, then you'll get rug pulled. Remember what I told you about the $5,000?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same thing will happen if you put your Bitcoin there. The key thing with Bitcoin is you always keep it in the wallet, like you said, the Trezor or a cold card or something like that, because self-custody means not only do you have sovereignty, but you also have privacy. In other words, you don't give any of that to the government at all. You just
how's Coinbase?
Coinbase is not safe. Brian Armstrong is also one of our enemies, but for right now, he's selling us Bitcoin, so we continue to use it. But as soon as you buy your Bitcoin, you pull it off and put it in your hard wallet. Then guess what? Brian Armstrong doesn't affect you. Coinbase, what they do is no big deal. Why? Because what eventually could the government do? Guys like Besant, guys like Trump, they could rug pull Coinbase and take all your money. That's the big risk right now for Michael Saylor. And you have to understand that people think this can't happen. Well, remember, FDR rug pulled gold in 1933.
Yes, he did.
That's why Executive Order 6102 exists. But, the idiots that are out there today don't think that this could ever happen in the United States when it's already happened before. And when they closed the gold window in 71, effectively, that was an admission of political counterfeiting. It was also an admission that we defaulted on our money. We're effectively broke that day, but people in America think, well, we're still going. I mean, we're still going. Why? Because they keep printing money. They keep debasing your money further. And people don't understand this.
Yeah.
They've never had an opportunity where they actually see their money go up in value instead of down in value. And when you buy Bitcoin, that's exactly what happens.
So you've answered one of my questions. I was going to ask you if you think the current connection with Tylenol and acetaminophen to autism is more of a scapegoat, and what your thoughts on that were. But I think you just answered that.
Of course it's a scapegoat. But is what Bobby was able to tell you true? Yeah. But anybody who had, 3 neurons with no spirochetes in them could figure that out. I mean, the company told us it was linked to it. But the bottom line is the vaccines are still a problem. But yeah, if you add it with something that reduces your redox, we could all figure that out. But, the problem is they're looking for a story to sell to people who are morons, people who are like the food gurus, people who think that you can fix this problem through diet. You can't. You cannot. And when you understand that, that makes up 95% of the American public, maybe not that high anymore, because I think COVID has woken up, maybe 25%. Those 25% are people that were in Maha when I started Maha, not the people that are in there now.
Yeah.
And probably the Bitcoiners. But I would tell you, even in the Bitcoin community, we've got a lot of people struggling with the Dunning-Kruger effect, because guess what? They took the jab to travel. And it turns out some of them, it's been a catastrophic mistake because they're dying now. They're having problems. I met several of them on this cruise. They actually came to meet with me at secure locations to say, tell me what I need to do. Well, how do I deal with this GBM? How do I deal with this brain cancer? How do I deal with this Sears autoimmune issue I have? The same problem that Jordan Peterson has. Because they're not getting answers back home.
Yeah.
They're not. It's just not happening. And it's not going to happen because the people that built this whole system, they're not going to tell you the truth. And not only that, they can control what truth leaks out. That's the reason why Kevin and Jessica had to put this paper on the Bitcoin blockchain so that a guy like you or someone like Vanessa who's recording this whole thing will be able to go and find out, oh, shit, this really is true, that they are all contaminated and it has huge mitochondrial effects. It causes brownouts in different systems. That's why we're getting all these different diseases. Yeah, that's the truth that we need out. And Bitcoin is the final common pathway that does it. That's the truth.
Well, I will say, going back to some of your initial comments about, Australia is really sick. I have been able to work with patients from all over the world. I've actually traveled, to various places like the UK, the Middle East, Australia, various places in between. And I will say some of the worst cases of autism that I've ever seen were in fact in the UK, the Middle East, and Australia. I can confirm that. So is what you're saying and what I just said connected here? Is
Absolutely. They all have bad light. They also are very compliant with Western doctrine. And right now, Western doctrine is 72 jabs for a child, the first year of life. So think about it. Just remember, our government is still advocating 3 COVID shots in the first year of life.
Yeah, it's insane.
Just think about that. Think about how psychic that is.
I will say I think the worst forms of autism that I've personally seen actually have come out of the Middle East.
Oh, I agree. Well, you got to remember the Middle East, even though they have good sun, they have terrible magnetism, really bad water. But what do they do to their people? They cover them with sheets,
Yes.
because of the religion. So even if they were out to try to fix this problem, do you have any hope of doing that? The answer is no. And they don't realize that the other thing is not just autism. The second fastest group of diabetics in the world, the first one is in India, where all the tech places are in Bangalore. Guess what number 2 is? Saudi Arabia.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I know it's rampant in Egypt. I know that much. It's terrible there.
Egypt's right next to Saudi Arabia, so no shock.
Right. Yeah. When I was going to Dubai, one thing that just made me sick, physically ill. I'm not talking about no, this is terrible. I'm talking like physically ill, is all of the power lines. They're just freaking everywhere. It's like an electromagnetic.
Well, you got to remember, they're building cities in the middle of a desert that shouldn't have it. So You've got to bring everything in. So people think, oh, this is amazing engineering. I look at it and go, how dumb can you really be? I mean, I just saw something today that Saudi Arabia is talking about putting a soccer stadium on top of a building in Saudi Arabia. And I'm going, how dumb do you have to be to think this is a good idea? And it's kind of like, Elon Musk's goal of going to Mars. Yeah, can we do it? But the question we got to ask ourselves, should we? Like, life didn't evolve on Mars. It evolved on Earth. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason there's no life on Mars, because it has no magnetic field. Okay. Yeah. It has no way to protect you from solar radiation. There's very little water on it. So why in the hell does anybody want to sign up to go there? And believe it or not, on this trip that I made, one of the reasons I went, there was an astronaut on this trip who actually been up in space and actually gave a couple of talks. And, was the discussions between him and I kind of interesting? Yeah, I even wrote about it on my Patreon blog, put his picture in there. He's a Canadian astronaut, and I made a point to highlight the idiocy of the things that he was standing for, because I wanted people to understand it. And the people that were on this boat, remember, they were all Commonwealth people. And when I showed them the reality, they were just like, here, we thought this was good stuff, and you are pointing out these issues. And I just showed him, I said, look, here's all the sites in the bibliography. I even got up and asked him point blank questions. I said, you told us you're in space and you've got permanent methylation changes and changes in your eyes. And this guy's a medical doctor as well, just so we're clear. He had no earthly idea how his time and space was linked to these problems. And I even pointed out to him, I said, we have two identical twins from Arizona who did the same thing you did, and they have the same problems you have. I said, and you don't think there's any link, huh?
What have you heard of? So I'm friends with Andrea Avrelino, and he's creating a company that's going to send UFC fighters into space. Have you seen this? And they're going to have these fights in outer space, and they're going to record them.
That's a great way to kill these guys. I can tell you that.
Exactly. Think about the non-native EMF that they're being exposed to, and then they're also
brain trauma, TBIs from each other.
Exactly. I mean, that's going to be.
I guess it's the ultimate gladiator games, right? I guess a failing world economy needs Circus Maximus to keep a lot of the idiots happy. But I have to just tell you, when I hear stuff like this, you kind of wonder sometimes, are people really this asleep? And I have to tell you, this trip I took, I saw it. There's not, I'd say, if I was to break it down, I'd say 75 to 80% of people were asleep. The 20 to 25%, they weren't asleep. They still believed nonsense, but they were curious enough to sit down and talk to me. And I had quite a big following just about everywhere I went, I can tell you. And I thought I was going to have a vacation. It turned out I worked more on this vacation than I ever did. And I didn't plan on that. But, I made a lot of new friends, and I think the message will resonate, going forward. But, what I found in my time in Europe, in Prague, and what I found on this world vacation, I may have to write about it sometime, but I'm going to tell you the implications of this, I think, have lit a fuse in me that we need to be more forceful. We have to light fires when people are wrong. People say you're burning bridges. I'm like, no, I'm lighting the way for other people to follow, because there's people like you just saw Peter Attia on 60 Minutes telling people VO2 maxes are good under blue light. I'm like, dude, do you understand a VO2 max is affected by blue light because you're changing the oxidation state of iron, you're making them pseudohypoxic, you're raising their blood sugar and insulin. So is the VO2 max they're getting accurate? But 60 Minutes doesn't care about that.
No.
Let's talk about Peter Attia. He charges people $250,000 a year, and he advocated for the COVID jab and tells people statins are a good thing for longevity, and he's supposed to be a longevity expert. So let me just tell you, when you're longevity experts who get put on media owned by the bankers, because let's face it, the Rockefeller banks, the Rothschild banks own all the media companies, you begin to see how these things are all related and connected together. They want to keep people sick and asleep. And not only do they own the retards, but they also own the experts. And they are feeding you nonsense that will push you right into the sausage grinder.
I totally believe that. So, and I see that every day. So I work with a lot of young families, and they're going to be, they're going to be listening to this, and they're going to be freaking out, right? Maybe they already have.
Why should you be freaking out? Well, why did you freak out about reality?
I know, but it's
why? Because you just woke up to it. You just got Windex sprayed on your glass eye. I mean,
yes.
I don't know how you could not be freaked out after living through COVID.
Well, that's true.
I mean, come on, what we're talking about right now. This is like a Disney cartoon.
So besides buying Bitcoin, besides going in that direction, what else can they be doing to ensure the health and safety of their family and their next generations?
Well, I tell people that your children are humanity's blockchain. They are the artificial intelligence. Why? They're part daddy, part mommy. They're not 100% like either one of you. So they are a new creature on the planet. That's the real artificial intelligence. And I think when you have that idea that longevity is tied to fecundity, to fertility, you begin to understand that the stuff that I talk about is incredibly important. So that means if you want your coconuts to last the next 50 to 100 years, you've got to put them on a farm where coconuts grow well. So the idea of a citadel, meaning a place for a young family to thrive and do well, to grow your own food, to have a well and have your own water, to make sure that you have sun above your head and not geoengineering from Raytheon going on, to not have the cell phone companies, changing things. I saw a patient this morning who actually lives in one of the wealthiest places in California, Malibu, and she's displaced from the Palisades fires. She's renting a place and she's concerned, well, what's going to happen to my 9-year-old when they rebuild all this and they turn it into a smart city? I said, what it means is that you probably need to hire a building biologist, because when they start building this stuff, you're going to see the readings that you do now are not going to be what the readings are later. That's the idea behind the Citadel. So realize being away from cities, if you're a young family, is smart. Maybe having jobs where you have to commute, or you can do connections, much smart. If it means you have to take less money, smart, but that means you have to put more money into Bitcoin to make off the offset. Do I think you need to live smaller? Do I think you need to be smarter? Do I think you need to disconnect from the matrix? Yes, and I mean that literally and figuratively when I say it. I think your family, your children, are the single most important thing you need to do, and you need to put them in front of you. Like, if you don't believe some of the stuff you and I are talking about, look at them. And I mean, Brandon, you have an ideal. You could probably speak to this more eloquently than I can, because you take care of all these kids that are destroyed. And there's nothing that destroys a family quicker, a mom and dad, than when you have a handicapped child, whatever the handicap is. Even though, remember, like people like Sergey Brin are trying to normalize autism. They're trying to tell you it's no big deal. That's not true. It is a huge handicap for families, and families should put their foot down and say, I don't want to have a child that's handicapped. I want to be able to have sex with my wife, have babies that are normal, that grow like normal coconuts grow on a tree. And we can't do that anymore in a lot of cities. And the proof is what Bobby Kennedy told us before, he was captured. What's the big issue? It's now 1 in 16 male births in Southern California, and parts of New Jersey, it's even worse. Where some other people live, would be 1 in 44. Realize that the zip code determines the chance of you having these handicapped kids. Well, guess what? Know those numbers. Do not build your citadel in that area just because grandma and grandfather are putting you on a guilt trip. Maybe you need to start thinking about that differently. And, if Brandon sold that 20% of gold and silver he has, maybe he could live off the grid somewhere else that he can't do right now, because now he's got money that's going this way. Or, you see my landscaper right there, Will, behind me. You know where he's walking? He's walking on something I couldn't afford to buy in the United States, but I could build it here in El Salvador because of Bitcoin. It's a teak deck. That's 4,000 square feet that goes all the way around my house so that I can always get in the sun.
That's awesome.
You understand what I'm saying? That I can't do that in the United States, but I can do it here.
So you've mentioned buying Bitcoin, et cetera. I'm just curious. I'm just throw this out there. How much more room does it have to run? Like, what do you think it's going to go up to?
Right now, the total assets in the United States, I should say in the world, maybe $800 trillion. Bitcoin's going to eat up 600 trillion of them in the next probably 30 years.
Okay. So there's a lot of room.
Let me just tell you something. If you own one Bitcoin today, you will be able to take care of your ancestors for 10 generations.
Jeez.
How's that? And I'm going to be honest with you, my math may be bad there. I'll flip this around. Robert Breedlove, who, I did a big 4-part podcast with.
Yes, I watched.
He did a pretty amazing tweet the other day. I'll share with you because I think you'll like this. He was sitting down with Peter McCormick, who's one of the Bitcoiners that also took the jab, whose life is at risk. Robert's got his own risks right now that are pretty public, especially today on Twitter. But he did the math. He said the United States government spent $6 trillion on COVID. He did all the math and said, we basically live 80 years. We work about 50 of those years. He did all the math. He said, basically, we destroyed 2 million lives with $6 trillion. So I want you to think about that math for a minute. That 2 million humans, that was the cost of COVID. That was the time theft, the value theft that the Department of Defense and centralized medicine did. Because everybody likes to blame Big Pharma, but I told you the last time I was on with you that people don't realize Big Pharma were the drug dealers in this game. The Department of Defense are who distributed the jab to them. They're the Colombian drug cartel. Okay?
Got it. Yeah.
And when you understand that, that means that the people that you keep voting for, okay, the Department of Defense, those are all the idiots that are in Congress that are protecting them. They cost us 2 million lives and they spend $6 trillion erasing them. So I'm going to remind you today on October 28th, 2025, I'm timestamping this, 25,000 children a month are being loaded with the same bioweapon. It's not stopped since President Trump has taken office. And because the Department of Defense, the intelligence agencies, Susie Wiles, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, won't let Bobby Kennedy do what needs to be done, won't allow the information that Kevin McKiernan and Jessica Rose just put on the Bitcoin blockchain. Do you understand? The people that have the scientific background are screaming at all of you to stop putting the criminals in charge.
Right.
And they put the answer on the Bitcoin blockchain so that when you do wake up and realize that your diet or your VO2 max aren't fixing this autism problem, that you'll read the damn paper eventually and begin to wake up.
Yeah.
That is why this circle of life that you and I are talking about. I know that you didn't come into this podcast thinking we were going to go down there, but sometimes podcasts need to resonate with the things that are really going on in our life right now so that the curious in your audience do start to see it and do start to understand it. I hope some of the young mothers and young fathers that listen to this are offended by what I said. I hope they're mad that I'm burning their bridges down. I hope they're mad that I'm going to force them to leave St. Louis, Los Angeles, New Jersey. Why? Because they're actively allowing child abuse to occur to their own family.
Right.
Because they're putting them in schools that are mandating this vaccine schedule. If you have a child right now and you're fortunate not to have a fertility or fecundity problem, and you turn your kids over for 8 to 10 hours a day to a government institution that forces them to have vaccines, you are no better than Ralph Barrick or Anthony Fauci. I hope that offends you. I really do, because that's what you're doing. And you need to know what you're doing.
Right.
You need to take that money out that you have, protect your children at all costs. Right. All costs. No matter what the experts tell you. No matter what Peter Attia or Sean Baker tell you on social media. You do what's right for your family, and you seek experts that try to tell you the truth. I don't have any illusions. I know that some of the things that I've probably told you will be proven untrue 20 or 30 years from now. But I can tell you this about me. Well, after I'm dead, people will know that I always fought for the truth. Always. And I always told you really what I thought and why I thought it. But I can tell you right now, you have no friends in centralized medicine. You have no friends in Washington, D.C. You have the illusion of freedom. You have the illusion of privacy. And you have one thing left, a loyal title, and it's only found in Bitcoin. And I think you need to dig deep and understand how that issue links to the autism issue, links to the issue in politics, links to the issue in economics. Because I want to see families build a citadel, be able to grow their own food again, drink their own water, provide good sunlight so that their little coconuts can grow and continue to grow 5, 6, 7, 8, 14 generations. I would like no better than 14 generations now, my grandchild to be talking to Brandon Crawford's grandchild who's doing this podcast that can say, look, our grandfathers told us this, and we were lucky that our families were the ones that listened. We weren't the ones listening to the idiots asking for a meat diet, working out in a gym, or getting a VO2 max on 60 minutes.
Right.
You can't advocate for things that are half truths. Why? Because when you're in the battle of your life, you're in the battle of time, you have no time for the superfluous. You have no time for half truth. You have to go all in for the A, not the B, not the C, not the D. Why? Because your children's life depend on it.
I agree. Well, I think it's becoming more and more obvious and evident for people to really uncover. I mean, even just recently, there was, Del Bigtree released an inconvenient study, right? And so that was talking about the Henry Ford Health System study that has not been published, showing that the unvaccinated population has a much, much less occurrence of any kind of chronic health disease, right?
But do you understand that? But do you understand that's the reason why Kevin and Jessica did what they did to put it on the blockchain? In other words, Dell hasn't realized yet that just because you uncover the truth, that's good enough. You have to link the truth to something that is the Library of Alexandria that will never be taken away. Don't you find it a little amazing, Brandon, that they didn't put this in JP Morgan's blockchain? They didn't put it in a Rockefeller Bank's blockchain. They put it on Bitcoin's blockchain.
Right.
And remember, it's a scientific paper, my friend. Yeah. So people who don't understand this thing don't understand why I'm criticizing Dell right now. I look, that story with Henry Ford, I've known about it for quite some time.
Yeah. But
guess what? Knowing the truth isn't good enough. You have to do something with it.
And so I'm going to interview him on Friday. Is there anything I should ask him?
Yeah, you should ask him about why Kevin and Jessica did what they did and why he hasn't done. I mean, the one good thing about him, he's disassociated himself really from a lot of stuff with Bobby. But you remember, he was really tight with Bobby, just like I thought I had a good relationship with Bobby. But when you find out that people are part of the evil empire, you have a duty not only just to be madder in hell and do projects like he's doing, but you have to make sure that that project, that Henry Ford paper, and that those facts stay true. Put it on the blockchain.
Got it.
Seeing a movie isn't good enough.
Right.
Because guess what? Most of the people that need to see this, after they kill, however many they're going to kill, the only way people are going to wake up is when they see 4 billion people less on the planet. Then they're going to say, what caused this? And guess what? It's going to be sitting on the blockchain from 2025 because Kevin and Jessica put it there.
So how do you access that? I don't understand how to go and access
It's
information
in
on the blockchain.
it's in the open timestamps. Like if you go and understand how to do homework on the blockchain, you can find it. And the simplest way to do it, to be honest with you, just follow Kevin McKiernan on Twitter and ask him that question. In fact, I would tell you, you should probably have Kevin McKiernan on your podcast to discuss this very issue. I would also tell you, it would be beneficial for you to also have Jessica Rose on. Why? Because these are two patriots that are fighting for every parent of a child that you've seen the last 5 years of your career. These two, they're fighting for the truth. They're doing something about it, and they're putting their careers at risk. Jessica's really putting her career at risk as a PhD because she doesn't have anything to fall back on. You know why Kevin can do it? Because he's a Bitcoiner. Why can I get away what I do? Do you think anybody in a hospital can hurt Uncle Jack at this point? Nope. Do you think anybody can hurt Kevin McKiernan at this point? Nope. Why? We got the freedom message 8 to 10 years ago. We haven't been involved in your fiat reindeer games with NVIDIA. No, we were smart enough to go with money you can't fuck with. Right. And guess what? When you have money you can't fuck with, it doesn't matter what the boards say to you. It doesn't matter what medicine tries to do to clip your Achilles tendon. You know what I say to them? Fuck you. And I keep doing what I do. That is the power of what Bitcoin allows one to do. And I guarantee you, there's a lot of young families out there that would like to tell their bosses the same thing. When they say you have to take a jab or you have to come back to work. Wouldn't it be nice to have the ability to say, I don't need your bullshit? Well, guess what? There's a lot of people that got into Bitcoin in 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 that can do that. And what am I telling you right now in 25? Right now, you'll be able to have that protection 3 or 4 years from now if you listen to the wisdom in this podcast.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna hedge a little bit more into that Bitcoin fund I've got. That's for sure. Start transitioning into it more.
Well, I just think you as a guy that's involved, especially in the vaccine injury story, and the fact that you've got this NVIDIA in your back pocket, I think you would love talking to Kevin, and I think you would love talking to Jessica. And I think, to be honest with you, the young families that you're trying to produce this content for, it's not just about helping on the biologist side. You got to help them on this side because guess what? They need to be able to know, hey, I need to put my kid in a ward-off school. I need to homeschool him because I can't do that. Well, that costs money. And right now, money's failing. So guess what? You need to have money that's growing because then you can do it. Then you're not taking your most prized coconut and putting him into public school where they're getting radiated with Wi-Fi for 8 hours and they're getting told they need 72 jabs between 0 and 6 years old. I mean, you would think that this is common sense, but I got to be honest with you. Parents make this mistake all the time. They say, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, Brandon, that's why this podcast is important. There is another path to sanity, and it starts through sovereignty and privacy. It starts through decentralized medicine. That's really what we're talking about today.
Absolutely. I did have another topic I really wanted to pick your brain on, if you don't mind, because I started working with a little kiddo named Grayson. He's a nonverbal autistic kid. He uses rapid prompting method to spell, and he can very effectively communicate. And I don't know if you're familiar with the telepathy tapes and how these kiddos go to, quote, the hill, right? It's like this metaphysical place where they can communicate. And Grayson has been able to blow my mind with the things that he knows. He's even dropped into a dream of mine, like literally. He's told me things that there's no way that he should know. How in the hell is this happening? What is going on?
Well, let's keep it. First, we'll do a stepwise fashion. I'll get you there. You know that people who have ALS do kind of the same thing through a computer interface. They're able to communicate using that. Okay. So I told a pretty famous story, I think 2 or 3 times on podcasts. I think the last time I told the story is to Breedlove, where when I was a neurosurgeon, this was a long time ago, a kid died at a drive-through at McDonald's, and his family donated his organs. And then a lady shows up to my practice 3 or 4 years later who was on a carnivore diet, never ate French fries, and she had this huge draw for French fries. And it turned out she had the kid's heart. And she was at my desk, or I should say my front office, pounding the girls, wanting to talk to me because she knew that I was the neurosurgeon that got the family to donate the organs, and she just wanted to talk to me. She didn't know any of the background. So when this happened to me, I sat down and heard this story, and I was stunned. I said, how would a lady know this? Remember, there's no computer interface there. She was blocked from all the records through the organ donation situation, yet the details that she had were pretty accurate. So that happened, I'm going to say 2004 or 2005. Then I'll take you to the next step. In 2009, a guy you know, Luc Montagnier, had a good friend named Jacques Benaviste who thought that he found a way for information, electromagnetic information, travel through water. The people at Nature ostracized him, ruined his career. He committed suicide, and this always killed Montagnier because they were good friends. So Montagnier decided to take Benefiste's science, take it to the next level. So what did he do? He took some DNA, denatured it in water, made the water as pure as you can, took all the DNA particles out. How did he prove that? He did it with PCR, the stuff that, we had to deal with through COVID, but he did it the right way, the way Carrie Mullis would tell you to do it. He made sure that the water is completely pure. Then he hooked a wire up to the water, sent it over the internet to 2 different countries far away, and then recapitulated the DNA in Italy and in France. And this has been recapitulated several times.
Really?
So what did he do? He published this in 2009 in Nature magazine. Now, he was doing it to try to tell people in centralized science that this is possible. Like, quantum biology is for real, and you killed my friend over it. That's really what his message was. Now let's fast forward to, COVID times. Montagnier told people when you took the jab, if you took 3 jabs, you should do a HIV test because you'll find out you'll be HIV positive. Literally, he's killed right after he mentions this on French TV. Okay, why? Because remember who he was. He won the Nobel Prize for HIV. He knew that Barrett and the DOD had put a special protein called GP41 on there. Because of the Nature experiment he did at Jacques Benaviste, he knew that the signature would be found on PCR testing if you looked for it because of electromagnetic induction. So now we go back to the original story that you asked me about. Why are you so amazed at this, Brandon, when you can sit wherever you are right now and pull out something like this and search anything in the world and get the answer, right?
Right.
It's the exact same physics behind it, okay? It works on quantum mechanics and relativity, okay? The human thalamus, which is what's damaged in all of these kids, is the place in the brain where all sensation goes. But what's the problem with these children? They can't access the to and fro pathways because of what happened to their brain transgenerationally in utero. So do you think that nature is not going to find a way for them to be able to communicate utilizing UHF, VHF, FM radio station technology in neurons to communicate a different way? The answer is that ability is there. And what part of our biology works on this? That's circadian biology. Why? How do we know where the Earth is in relation to the sun? The same way. We use light to do it. Okay? And when you begin to see all these different examples that I'm giving you, people in the centralized place will tell you this is anecdote, but it's not. It's centralized biology doesn't understand really how physics works. And when you begin to understand that information transfer happens through electromagnetic radiation through 2 antennas, the problem is what you believe an antenna to be isn't always what you think. It turns out that Montagnier was trying to tell us that water, especially coherent water in mitochondria, is probably the best antenna on the planet.
Yes.
And that is the reason that this can happen. That's the reason your friend and patient with autism, Grayson, can communicate with you just the way Stephen Hawking communicated to the public through his computer interface. The physics is exactly the same. The difference is you don't realize that the antenna is in you and him.
So is it via biophotons? Is it a recursive light loop?
Of course it is. Exactly what it is. And that's the key. The thing is, you're just waking up, or science is just waking up to what I've been telling people about for 20 years, that there are so many different places in your body that make biophotons, which we call UPEs, which are ultra weak photonic emissions. Your blood makes them. Your white blood cells make them. Your neurons make them. Your mitochondria makes them. They're everywhere. But the problem is they're very random. What does an antenna do? It's tuned into a molecular frequency, a resonance. And when the connection's made, information is passed. And it turns out these kids with autism, when you put them in these alien environments long enough, they make a connection some way, somehow. And your patient has done it this way. Now, does that mean every autistic kid has Grayson's ability? Of course not. But does it also mean that there's a lot of other frequency channels that people can tap? I'll give you another one that we know that works the same way. UHF, VHF, that's what the Schumann resonance is.
Yeah.
Well, the Schumann in resonance, even though it's in the radio frequency range, is native EMF. Why? Because it's the heartbeat of Earth. It's made through the ionosphere and the solar plasma. That's how it occurs, through a resonance, just like sound happens in a guitar. But realize that everything around the Schumann resonance is toxic to us. But because that was native to the planet, the visible spectrum and the Schumann resonance are two antennas or frequencies that our thalamus works on. That's actually how we're able to tell where the Earth and the sun are as we revolve. That's the reason why there's two amino acids that have one single codon. They're time crystals to tell us when this happens. That's the reason why methionine and tryptophan are able to do this. Tryptophan has glucogenic pathways and ketogenic pathways. Why? Because you need those at different times of the season. This is the reason why the meatheads that are out there in the carnivore land don't understand how powerful the science is that I teach people. They think if you don't look like them, you're a dumbass. Well, it turns out the truth is you can look like them and still be a dumbass, because most of them are, because they can't sit down and have this conversation I'm having with you to explain why Grayson's able to still communicate, even though the superhighways that go between his thalamus and his sense organs are destroyed.
Mm-hmm. So it's
you can
both
still communicate.
It's both atavistic and evolutionary, right? Because
right.
It
can be both, and it can be both at the same time.
It has to be in that scenario, right?
Correct. I mean, exactly correct. So that also tells you that could future humans have the ability to do things that we now consider superhuman? Yes. But why can't we do it? It's because we haven't made the UPEs coherent enough to get that. But it turns out autistic kids have figured a way around that. Why? Because they're probably saving resources from the normal pathways that humans use. And now they're able to harness that energy and do something different, which brings us back to the story of Rain Man. That's exactly what an idiot savant can do.
Yeah.
For the same reasons. So if you think about when you asked me this question, I just gave you a bunch of different answers about how this is possible. Not only that, I pointed you to Luc Montanet's paper that's 2009 in Nature magazine. Mm-hmm. Go read it for yourself. I try to tell Huberman about it, but it went in this ear and out the other. We have incredible capabilities. What life is capable of is amazing. That's the reason why when someone's really injured, I believe they can be fixed. But no one else can, because they don't understand some of these mechanisms that you and I are talking about. Eating a rib house steak every day isn't going to solve this problem. Okay? Right. Not. And doing a VO2 max every 3 months is not going to solve this problem. Yeah. If you put AirPods in your ear and think because you can do 100 push-ups that these aren't hurting you, you have just defined yourself as a Dunning-Kruger idiot.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, I was, well, not funny, sad, but I was at a pediatric brain injury conference this past weekend, and it was a Q&A session after I spoke, and one of the parents said, we've been trying, the carnivore diet and the keto diet, and, they're only getting worse. And I said, let me guess, they're heading into metabolic acidosis. They're probably already there. I said, but I can guarantee you, your kiddo doesn't see the early morning sunrise. And they were like, no, you're right. They can't, they never do. And I said, well, because if you don't, your TCA cycle won't spin. You can't use any of those things that you're putting into them, right?
That's exactly what you want to do. You want to use the TCA cycle. You want to be carnivore or paleo. Make sure you see the sunrise. You do that, then your diet will be fine. But Absolutely. You still haven't solved the original problem. That's only one little problem. If your little kid's got a destroyed thalamus and every single array into its brain, that highway is broken. You have to learn how to rebuild those highways. You have to understand how circadian biology, light and dark and temperature cycles control melatonin, BDNF, cortisol, GABA. All of these things, the default state that happened inside that uterus is possible to reobtain. But you have to take the kid's neural circuitry apart and put it back together. And the only way I know to do that to make a good coconut is to put them in an environment where there's no electromagnetic pollution, where the child is getting light, dark, and temperature cycle information that's proper, and they're connecting with Earth properly. That's it.
Right. How we were designed to live and grow, right?
Boom. That's it. It's really that simple. If it happened in a uterus, it can happen outside the uterus. How do we know that? Because when a baby is born, that brain doesn't function. They can't talk. They can't wipe their own ass. They can't go to school, right? But imagine over 10, 12, 13, 14 years, that brain starts to work. So there is a plan for it postnatally, and it happens outside that placenta, outside the uterus. And it turns out nature controls that decentralized game. And we need to connect those kids back with the default state. We do that, and we do it successfully, Brandon. Then you begin to see why Uncle Jack just told you about the Citadel and why it's so damn important.
Right. Well, I did get your emails. You're building a community in El Salvador. And by the way, I'm going to ask my wife. I'd love to come and see you guys in December. I would love to get up there and see your place, meet you in person. I think it'd be fantastic. But do you want to say anything about the community you're building down there?
Well, not really. I'm getting ready to have, let's say, a live event for my members. This is not going to be open to the public. This is only open to my tribe. And I'm getting ready to do that Thursday, just so you know that. So on Thursday, I'll be talking to my tribe members about why I'm doing what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, what the goal is, and what I see as the future of this, because I believe what I'm doing down here is going to be what many of your young families who are appalled by what we talked about, they're going to need to follow this model. Why? Because that's how they're going to turn their young coconuts, into normal kids down the road. I don't want anybody to think it's not possible, because it is.
Right. I totally agree with that. And I've seen it. I mean, I've had multiple kids that have really recovered and they could not speak, and now they can speak, and they could not socially interact, and now they can interact, et cetera. So, I mean, I've seen it, but you're right. They do have to take these steps. And a lot of them are huge life altering, family altering steps, but you have to do it. There's no way around it.
You have to do it. If you decided to have the sex and have the kid, now the kid's not right, no matter what the etiology is, you have a duty for the parent that you have to put your life on order to get the kid right. It's as simple as that. And I understand that that's a big ask, but the bottom line is that's part of the reason why Bitcoin's important, because when you do Bitcoin, you're able to do that. You can put your coconut back in there. And I mean, I tried to tell, Nicole Shannon this, just like I told you this last time we were here. Autism, the easiest way I can explain it to you is like trying to grow a coconut tree in Edmonton, Alberta. Okay. Right. And you can't do that. You got to put the coconut in the tropics so that you can get all the default state back. There's no sideshow. There's no greenhouse. If you do the greenhouse, all you're going to do is make the kids somewhat better, but not totally better. We're looking for complete reversals. And I'm telling you that the default state is possible, but it's not going to be a fun trip for the family. You are quite correct. in what you said, but you have to remember something. This information that you and I are talking about, it's not out there publicly. Why? Because the people that are out there that are hurting these kids, they want you not to they want to normalize autism, and it shouldn't be normalized. It needs to be, said for what it is. It's an injury caused by things in the environment that shouldn't be there, that alter our transgenerational epigenetic light show that our body makes. And once we teach parents that they can control that light show so that they can renovate and go back to the default state, and their children can go on to be, good coconuts and make other good coconuts, then guess what we just did? We just created a human blockchain that we may not have to worry about Kevin McKiernan and Jessica Rose's paper. That's really what you and I are doing through this podcast. We're trying to do what Jessica and Kevin did through their paper. Right. And we're trying to affect as many minds as we possibly can. But I have no illusion. The minds that will be affected by this are going to be the ones that are open. The ones that aren't, they should just turn the channel off. And I'm okay with that. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and I understand that. But my job is to keep digging for the truth. And that's what I do.
Absolutely. Well, that's why I really enjoy these conversations. I know you're coming up on time, so I want to be sensitive to that. So as always, thank you for all the profound truths that you discussed today. I actually really enjoyed the discussions on Bitcoin and your thoughts around that and connections with autism. I think, it's definitely something that I wasn't thinking about. So those are definitely discussions that I'm going to do a better job of bringing up and connecting those dots for people. Again, those are not really dots that I had really connected. So I do appreciate that. And as always, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you want to leave us before you go?
No, just get your kids in nature. That's the single most important thing you need to do. See the AM sunrise, the PM sunset. Make sure their feet and hands touch the earth a lot. Keep them away from technology and teach them history so that they know who the enemies really are.
Absolutely. Very wise words. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Take care.
We hope today's episode has inspired you to take that next step toward your best self. Remember, the path to longevity is paved with small, daily decisions. Your journey is unique, and every step, every choice, brings you closer to your ultimate vision of a healthier, happier life. For more insights, tips, and resources, visit drbrandоncrawford.com.